The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davison, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Greetings and salutations all. Welcome to the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit. It is Friday. It is 11:35-ish, which means it's time for another episode of the week that was on Deadline Detroit. Thank you very much for being with us today. We've got a whole lot to talk about. I've got a great panel lined up today to get to some very, very important things that are happening in our country right now and around the world, frankly. Alan Lengel and Nancy Derringer, both of DeadlineDetroit.com, are with us as usual. Nice to see you both.
Always.
Good to be here.
Susan Demas, editor of TheMichiganAdvance.com, is with us as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And, of course, Nancy Kaffer of the editorial board at the Detroit Free Press joining us once again. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, so let's start with this for just a second, because if anybody ever comes up to you and says, I think I could be the president of the United States, just point them to this week and have them reassess whether or not they think they're capable of dealing with the multiple crises that are taking place in our nation right now, because this has been a really, really awful week. Of course, we still have the fallout from the Afghanistan withdrawal. We now have Texas taking aim at women's rights and reproductive rights in this country. We also have a hurricane that really messed up a whole huge swath of this country and is exposing some of our serious infrastructure failings that we have here, and a lot more. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to start with today. And I really want to go to Texas because they just passed.
I'm
let me rephrase that. I want to start talking about Texas because since my friend moved out of that state, I have no reason to ever go there again. And I likely will probably make sure that I keep that promise. They passed a raft of bills. One, anybody can just carry whatever weapon they want with no training, no permits, no nothing. That seems like a good thing. And the other thing, of course, is this really bad fetal heartbeat bill, as they call it, which is basically banning abortions after 6 weeks with no exceptions at all for rape, for incest, for the health of the mother. And worse than that, it basically deputizes morons who are going to be open carrying to go after these people and sue them. And all they're doing is forcing providers out of business because they're not going to be able to deal with that hassle. So basically, Dog the Bounty Hunter and his wonderful wife are going to be able to go after and stalk people who they think may have done something illegal and file lawsuits against them. The Supreme Court then, of course, whiffs on this magnificently in the middle of the night the other night and is leaving a situation where Roe v. Wade is very much hanging in the balance. And they basically punted on a very, very important question, leaving a whole lot of women in bad situations in a state like Texas. And there are a whole bunch of other states that are just drooling to follow suit. I'm not happy about this. I know that the panel is likely not happy about this. Who wants to go first on this one? Because, I mean, we need to pick this apart because there are so many parts of this that are incredibly problematic. We'll get to the courts later. I want to talk about the law itself and what sort of quote unquote science there is behind this, because the question of viability is not even being asked here.
I would like to go last on this one. So
okay, let's go with Susan.
Go first, yeah.
So when I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter about a little more than 19 years ago, at 6 weeks, I think I barely knew that I was pregnant. And I'm not alone. There are a lot of women who don't know past that point. So, I mean, this is a backdoor full ban on abortion. Let's just be completely clear with what this is. This is to make it impossible for the vast majority of pregnant people to exercise their right to decide what they want to do with a pregnancy.
It is. And it's a particularly scummy bill in the way that they get around judicial review on this question. Go ahead, Alan.
Doesn't say that. I mean, you know, it's 6 weeks is sort of the cutoff date when a lot of women don't even realize they're pregnant till right then. And by the time it's too late, they were saying that 85 to 90% of the abortions down in Texas are being done after 6 weeks. And what's disturbing is not only how the Supreme Court handled it, but it's a trend of being able to get around. They issued a one-paragraph, not signed by anyone, a one-paragraph opinion, basically saying we're not ruling on the constitutionality of this, but the challenges weren't, good enough for us to do anything about it. They're doing that a lot, and so there's no way to defend or argue their point. They're just issuing decisions, and it's not only with this, but it's a pattern. And we have such an imbalance right now, on the court. It's just even more dangerous.
Well, and that's part of what's so galling. Thank you, guys. I read more than I talk, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, because I talk a lot. So the whatever the word I just said is the idea that we're going to nominate and confirm a bunch of very conservative right-wing judges to the court. Like, this is totally predictable. There was no way this wasn't going to happen. It's not a bug, it's a feature. This was the plan, and everyone knew it was the plan, and yet we had folks like nodding sagely and saying, oh, I think these judges will uphold precedent, and I don't think we're going to see any major changes here. And it was like, really? Are you kidding me? Because that's just insane. And we've had, I interviewed some very earnest law professors several years ago, I think after Trump was elected, in the anticipation that he would nominate conservative judges, about whether or not Roe v. Wade could be overturned. And they all said, oh, well, it's a huge burden to overturn a precedent, something that people have relied on. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a huge burden to be able to overturn a precedent, and they're totally going to do it. I mean, it's just not like, I'm going to stop ranting and let someone else talk in just a second. But the other thing that's amazing to me is, the vast majority of Americans support legal abortion. It's not really controversial among people. Democrats have control of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Why can't we get a law passed here? Like, I think even Joe Manchin's constituents, majority, probably support, abortion for women in many, many, many circumstances. So why are we not moving forward on this? Why does this depend on 5 people signing on to something in a nation of 300 million?
Well, I think Nancy Pelosi has already stated that she's definitely going to take it up in the House. The question is whether or not
she has, but Joe Manchin will stand athwart, this screaming stop. And they say Murkowski and Collins can maybe be counted on to flip it. They need a 60-vote filibuster-proof majority to pass this because of reasons. So this is all just like, but this is so clearly a case of something the vast majority of Americans, regardless of gender, race, religion, support. I mean, maybe not religion. I'm sure evangelicals and anyway, lots of people support it.
Sure.
But the Supreme Court would just chuck that law too. I mean, this is a far right court like we have never seen. I mean, if you read Chief Justice Roberts' dissent in this case, look, he wants to overturn Roe v. Wade as well. He just wants to do it in the correct way with having arguments and go with the letter of the law. These 5 justices did it in the dead of night. They didn't care. It was legal thuggery, and they loved it. That is why Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett were put on the court, and they are having the time of their lives. And so, no matter what Congress passes at this point, I don't see how it would ever stand with this court unless we expand the court.
Though I think that's not a reason not to try, though.
I agree.
Make them do it. And also, I've always been so delighted by the whole argument that Roberts wants to do it in the right way, because that'll surely make a difference. I'm sure it's like, or when a decision has come out that he hasn't taken the immediately anti-Roe v. Wade side, and people are like, oh, well, that's a sign that maybe, no, it's not a sign. It's a sign that he is a little more thoughtful about how things look than his peers. But ultimately, the end result is the same.
Well, symbolic or not, I still think it's important for them to try, as you point out, because this is the kind of thing that, you are going to activate a lot of people politically in a way that they haven't been for a long time. When you start taking aim at their rights and their rights to decide with their own selves, you know, what they can do with their pregnancy, that's going to motivate a lot of people. And, you know, this is the kind of thing that you have to rub their noses in every chance you get. Pummel them with this kind of stuff. Even a state like Texas, you know, which has been trending blue. This might be the kind of thing that puts them over the finish line in a couple of their Senate races, some of those House races. Now, it depends on how these stupid lines get drawn down in Texas, because that's going to be a huge fight over the next few months. But, you know, it seems to me that there are a whole lot of people that might be willing to punish the freaking white conservative men that are making decisions about their body.
Well,
I'm sorry, real quick. That's
Please.
why they're also passing all of these voting restrictions to make it as hard as humanly possible for people of color and young people in particular who tend to vote Democratic to be able to exercise their legal right to vote. They're trying to sort who the electorate is in their favor because they know that they're passing all sorts of things that are just not popular.
Right.
And it's a coordinated attack from the right.
Susan's exactly right, because I mean, without that kind of interference, Texas is like 2 federal election cycles away from going blue. And yeah, this is all desperation moves to try to stop that from happening. So, you know, there it is. But the other piece is, I'm going to be like Cassandra here and, you know, prophesy the future for you, but all the people who are really, really anti-abortion, they're also pretty opposed to birth control too. And they don't talk about that as much because birth control is overwhelmingly popular. Even I think the last PBS poll I read said something like 79% of American Catholics use active birth control. And you can tell that with your own eyes because my grandmother was the youngest of 13. And tell me the last time you saw a family of 13 that wasn't a reality show. I mean, even people who are very opposed to these things publicly, when you look at their families, it's pretty obvious that they're not using the rhythm method. But it's you know, but that is the agenda. There's opposition to birth control, and that is a thing. A lot of people have mixed feelings about abortion, and that's okay. I don't think everybody has to be on the same page as long as the legal right is there. It's okay to have weird feelings about it. It's a big deal. It's a thing that I don't know a single woman who's undertaken one without understanding the gravity of what she's doing, despite the popular idea of a lady who just runs off and gets one for fun on a weekend. But birth control, there's no ambivalence about that whatsoever. People love it. It's a great thing. It's the best thing we've ever done. And they're coming for that next, guys.
I've been hearing the same thing. And I just, frankly, I've never understood this. This is something that has been in the law for 50 years. It seems this court is willing to completely just obliterate the concept of stare decisis if they want to get rid of something, which is just something it's basically a change of the last 200 years in this court.
I was going to say, it's interesting, that a lot of people here look and think of Sharia law, and they think of, like in Afghanistan where they want to impose that, in, other countries where it is sort of the law. And they think, like, how crazy is it that religion is so intertwined with government, and yet here we have the religious, so many movements trying to dictate our lifestyle based on, the Bible and all these other religious beliefs.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I said I wanted to go last.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of petering out here.
Hardly.
I no longer work for a upstanding journalistic outfit like the Detroit Free Press or even Michigan Advance. I work for this fly-by-night news site we call Deadline Detroit. So I'm just going to say something really, really nasty here. And that is that having lived through the 70s and 80s as a fertile woman, I'm no longer fertile. I'm 64 years old almost, and that's the way it goes. And knowing what I've read about Donald Trump's behavior as both a single and a married man, and his the way his grabbing and kissing and pushing and raping and so forth, there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that Donald Trump has paid for, and I'm going to put the over/under at 7 abortions in his lifetime. And the idea that Donald Trump is the architect, this man is the architect of the destruction of Roe v. Wade, just chaps my ass raw. And I think this is why suburban women like me despise him. And if they can connect this action to whoever they nominate for president in 2024, I don't even think it'll be a contest.
I'm not going to weigh in on Donald Trump's personal involvement with the procedure. I will say that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, rich people will still be able to obtain those services. They'll be able to have a private doctor perform it. And it's people who have few options. If you're at that point, you don't have good options. You have like choices between a lot of bad options, and it's just going to make it even more harder and unsafe and more dangerous. But the other thing I wanted to say is I want everyone who's listening to understand that this is not a women's issue. This is an everyone's issue. If you are a heterosexual man who is married to, dating, involved with a woman, whether or not she can control whether, how often, how many times she becomes pregnant, that is your issue. That is not a women's issue. Whether or not if you are a heterosexual man involved with a woman, whether or not if your partner becomes pregnant and there are catastrophic problems with the baby, whether or not she is forced to carry that not viable baby to term, that is your issue. This is all framed as women's issue. I know you guys get this, but I want everybody listening to understand this. If you are a non-heterosexual man who has sisters, who has daughters, who has female friends, this is your issue too. This is not a women's issue. Women's rights are human rights. I believe I've heard that said. It's true.
Well, I just want to, sort of talk a little bit about the court for just a second here, because reading the dissent that Roberts and Kagan put out the other day, it's like it was pretty obvious to me that there should have been a stay placed on this until some of these things could have been litigated. The excuse they used was completely weak, saying, well, technically we can't really enforce it because of the way this law was drawn, which gives people the power to do things instead of the state. That was weak. So I'm saying, why not call them out on their bullshit here? I suggest that somebody like a state like California should all of a sudden ban certain types of rifles, certain types of guns. But here's what you do. Instead of having the state be in charge of it, have a bunch of dog the bounty hunter types go out there and start stalking people who own a bunch of guns and start filing a bunch of frivolous lawsuits claiming that people are violating the law, and see if the court responds the same way when they're asked for a stay on this. If you're going to test them, if this is what the court truly believes, call them on it. Because then if they sit there and they say, well, that's a violation of the Second Amendment, well, guess what? Screw you. Because you're hypocritical liars. And I think somebody needs to challenge this. Some city like Chicago could do it. Some city like New York. There have already been pushes there to do that. I really think guns is the issue that they should probably try to push back on.
There's actually, a couple of years ago, I ran across some policy think tank in Illinois had come up with a plan for regulating guns at the state level. And I thought it was a really interesting idea. And I think that it would be great. Obviously, we can't try this here because we have a Republican legislature. I think it's a really interesting idea, and I will try to dig up this link and share it with you, Craig, and maybe it could be the subject of a later discussion.
I would love that. Please do. You have my email address, of course. All right. Well, obviously, the fallout of this is going to be something we'll be witnessing. And I mean, just this notion of individuals potentially stalking people, filing these lawsuits. I mean, Texas, I don't understand the mentality down there. I get that they're the Lone Star State, but if they're really trying to go back to 1850, some of the other things they're doing down there, did you see that they have to pass out patriotic Texas history materials to people who get their driver's license there and register to vote? So basically you get the whitewashed version of what happened to the Alamo and places like that. They're doing that. They're also suggesting that you cannot talk about white supremacy in any way in your curriculum. You can't talk about institutional racism in any civics curriculum. That's another bill that passed. They were talking about seceding a few years ago, and I'm thinking maybe instead of that, we should just freaking kick them out.
So, I understand why we're focusing on Texas. This is where the news happened, but I think it would be a really big mistake to not understand that a lot of those same factors are in play here, that a lot of members of our legislature are very much in sympathy with what's happened in Texas, that a lot of people in our state Like, I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, Texas is large, and a lot of crazy stuff happens there, and they have control. The people who want to do these things have control in a way that they thankfully don't have here. But yeah, I think it would be really short-sighted to think this can't happen here.
Oh, we are vulnerable in
Definitely
Michigan
can't,
because of the petition drive system that we have here. You can have a situation where 300,000 people sign this thing, and if the legislature wants to do it, they go right around Governor Whitmer's veto. We're seeing it happen right now on another issue when it comes to voter ID. I think it's just a matter of time before somebody goes that route. Right to Life of Michigan will likely go that route, I think, sometime in the next few months.
Well, and also, we have Governor Whitmer who can veto things that come to her through the legislature. But if a different governor were in that seat, that's a very tenuous protection, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if Roe v. Wade is just formally gutted by the Supreme Court, we go back to a law that's almost a century old, where abortion is illegal in Michigan. We are one of those states. Now, it would be heavily litigated, and the language is very confusing because it's not medically accurate, but it would not be a good situation. And we obviously don't have a sympathetic legislature that would want to enshrine any kind of basic health rights. I mean, the Senate Majority Leader, Mike Shirkey, has compared abortion to slavery like so many others have. So, we may not be Texas, but as far as our legislature is concerned, they would love us to be.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, like I said, this is something that we're going to have to watch carefully. And again, before you sign any petitions, everybody out there, read them carefully, because there's a lot of strange things afoot. There's going to be go ahead.
It's not illegal to lie to people about what's in the petition.
Nope, absolutely not. And hey, it's America.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a lot to talk about here. Let's talk about Afghanistan for just a little bit, because ending this war was something that I think everybody was in agreement. Most people were in agreement needed to happen. There was never going to be a good way to make this happen. But I want to talk about this notion that I'm seeing from people that suggest that somehow President Biden should be impeached as a result of how he handled the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Yes, it was tragic. 13 U.S. soldiers died in a terrorist attack. But just my way of thinking, if you are going to impeach a president over being the victim of a terrorist attack, then basically, what better way to teach terrorists that the way to destabilize the United States is to keep doing terrorist attacks?
Right.
I mean, there's no logic behind it. And you can sit there and say that there were some things that were done wrong with this withdrawal, but on the whole, getting out of Afghanistan was never going to be pretty. I'm surprised we didn't have more terrorist attacks throughout the course of that week. Go ahead, Alan.
It's interesting. Someone like Lindsey Graham, who is pushing for this impeachment, is the guy who defended Trump to the death.
He's a tool.
I mean, gosh, there's just a few people that are just, it's really disgraceful.
I think there's a lot of things that went wrong with the withdrawal. And and there's a lot of things that are still going wrong. Like, why are they not handing out visas like candy on the tarmac at Kabul airport? Why haven't they been doing that all along? But when you lose a war, bad things happen.
Can you imagine if Democrats had said that George W. Bush should have been impeached over 9/11? I mean, it's ludicrous. And the fact that you had Congressman Peter Meyer, who is supposed to be our bright light of, conservative thought, voted to impeach Donald Trump, brave stance. Congratulations. It was like, hey, guys, don't worry. I want to impeach the Democrat too. I'm still with you. Please reelect me. I mean, just the definition of a completely unserious person. There's a reason why most of the time when you're a freshman in Congress, you're just supposed to sit around and get a mentor and try and learn the ropes instead of trying to get yourself on Jake Tapper's show at every point.
I'm so disappointed with that.
Tell us how you really feel, Susan.
I think Mitt Romney has shown us that these guys are they take a stand and then they're so afraid of being pushed away from the party that they go, like Romney says, yeah, I'm going to vote for impeachment. And then it's like, no, but I'm not going to vote for it the first time. I'm not going to vote for witnesses. appearing and stuff like that. It's like they're so torn. They have to be part of the party that even when they go against the party vote, then they come back in the fold and they disappoint you.
Disappoint you. I mean, well, you know what? I'm going to go a little early with my schmuck of the week because I think this dovetails nicely into this whole attitude here. And my schmuck of the week is Kevin McCarthy. Because as we're talking about terrorist attacks in Afghanistan, we, of course, forget that there was a terrorist insurrection on January 6th at the Capitol, which is now being portrayed by people like Madison Cawthorn as political prisoners. These guys are, quote unquote, political prisoners,
Right.
and that this is all overblown and that this didn't really happen and the videos have been altered. But then Kevin McCarthy threatens telecom companies this week, saying, if you comply with a legal and lawful subpoena for our phone records, we are going to make you pay if we ever get power back. Now, I'm sorry, maybe I've been watching too many gangster movies over the years, but that certainly sounds like somebody saying, hey, that's a beautiful family you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to them.
Yeah.
It's extortion. And you know, he basically said that out loud, that if you actually comply with the law and the laws of the United States, I'm going to make you pay for it someday. Which,
I think there's
he can or can't do.
There's a obstruction charge that could be filed against somebody like that. I mean, you're threatening, you're obstructing justice, and there is a charge for that.
What the hell are they so afraid of? Is my question.
They learned well from their mentor, the gangster.
What are they afraid of?
Donald Trump. Yeah. Well, it's obvious they're afraid of something, or they wouldn't be making threats like that.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's the whole thing. The people, if you look at the list of people that they're going after their phone records to find out just what communication there was between them and the president and everybody else that's involved in this kind of stuff, because you're going to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene's phone records, Lauren Boebert, people like this, and see that maybe, just maybe, they were chatting with some of these folks who were out there. And I think that's going to be really important. And it is embarrassing for them. And the thing is, if they're going to try to, quash this because it's too embarrassing for the party, well, that just tells me we need to push a little bit harder and make sure that they do comply.
I mean, I'm of mixed feelings on this, because the thing is the embarrassing for them. Is it a righteous consequence? Yes. Is it going to change the opinion of anyone who doesn't already feel that way? No. Anyone who thinks it's a political prosecution and that it's overblown and that it's they were just tourists sitting in the Capitol, finding that Marjorie Taylor Greene or whoever was communicating with them, it's not going to change their minds. They're just going to think this is more of the same stuff.
It doesn't matter if it changes minds.
It's not a reason not to do it.
Okay,
it's not a reason.
I'm saying on a legal front, I agree with you, but will it get us anywhere as a better place as a country? I don't know about that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying I don't think it's going to make a difference.
I don't think it can hurt.
It's not going to hurt anything. And frankly, I want to know. As a citizen, I want to know whether or not there was any sort of culpability on these people's part. And I
think people need to comply with the law. They need to comply with search warrants.
Absolutely.
Things, and we need to investigate things. But I don't think it's going to get us to a better place where people suddenly their eyes are open and they realize that this really was an insurrection. If they've been in that place since January, it's September. If they've spent 8 months denying the reality of what happens, you cannot change their minds on this.
Well, I mean, but they're so afraid. Go ahead, Susan. All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not really very concerned about public opinion from traitors. But if it turns out that sitting members of Congress were giving up Nancy Pelosi's location,
yes, I agree with that.
I would love to see them rot in a jail cell for their entire lives or worse. The message has to be sent that you do not get to stage a coup and get away with it.
Yes.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. People who staged a coup should face consequences. People who were complicit should face consequences. But the act of them facing consequences is not going to wipe the veils away from the millions of Americans who don't already agree with us.
All right, who gives a shit about them? I do not give a shit about them.
Okay, I'm worried about those you hate in Texas, and they're in our legislature here, and there are people in our state who are doing things that we don't like. So, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. I'm saying I don't think it's going to have a big change. And I do care about what they think, because I want them to cooperate in having a non-insane world.
I think we have independent voters here. I think there are people who are not hardcore Democrats who can at least be convinced that something's wrong with what's going on. I mean, the core is the core. I mean, it's religion. For a lot of people. I mean, they're never going to convert. They're never going to change their ways. They're going to, but for some people, I think it'll make. I mean, we're part of that probably core religion. I mean, we're probably not going to change a lot of our opinion, but we're willing to accept. Look, if the Democrats screw up, we're certainly willing to accept and process that and if necessary, take action. The difference is the Republican, the core is not going to do anything, but there are other people that I think it's important.
Well, and I think for me, it's just people. Yeah, you're not going to convince everybody. But that 30% is always going to be on that side. That's fine. But there are a whole bunch of people, as Alan said, that are somewhere in the middle that are looking at this a little bit more rationally. But, just because they would not be running so scared if they didn't think that there was something there, and they're only worried about the politics of it, not anything else. They're worried that they're going to get blamed for this kind of stuff in the next election cycle. So they're willing to cover up bad behavior, which is a problem. And now, I mean, here's the other thing, too. You've got a situation where they're threatening to kick Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger out of the party just for actually trying to investigate what really happened that day. And if they actually expel those two from the party, which they're talking about, that tells you a lot about the fact that they are scared. They are scared that this is going to happen, and they are under the thumb of some goofball dude with orange skin and weird hair who's living down in Florida and grifting money off of them every single day. And they still haven't figured that crap out.
I'm still getting emails.
I just keep shoving it in their faces, rubbing their noses in it. I think shame is an important thing. I think I just kicked Nancy off by accident. There she is.
I still get
and there,
emails.
Kaffir, you're out.
I get emails from the Trump camp saying, "Hey, it's still not too late to get your lifetime membership for blah blah blah." I mean, they're still collecting money for that guy.
Well, and their emails are still like threatening. They're like, "Don't make us put you on the naughty list."
Yeah.
Like I said, they have learned well from their mentor. I mean, I saw a video of Lauren Boebert speaking at that tour she's doing with Matt Gaetz or something. It was like an 8th grade speech contestant. If you believe as I do, with the hand gestures and everything, I have never seen a stupider woman in my life. And yet, look at the heights she's risen to.
Well,
there you go.
All right. We are about halfway through here. We do need to talk a little bit about, we'll get to COVID later because there's still some stuff to get to on this. And I mean, we talk about it. We've talked about it every week for a year and a half now, but there's new stuff that's coming out all the time. But I do want to talk about Hurricane Ida. Wow. This storm packed a serious punch. I mean, when people in New Orleans are saying, Katrina seemed like a walk in the park compared to this. And then, of course, you see how many people have just died in places like New Jersey, Pennsylvania. The flooding that this thing did, it just cut a swath across the middle of this country. And we should get used to this because this is the kind of storms we're going to be seeing. There's no longer 100-year storms. We're being impacted by it here in Michigan with the level of rain and flooding that we've seen this year. Things are changing out there. This one was really, really bad. I feel horrific for all those folks that are dealing with 100 degrees down in New Orleans with no power right now. And it's just, I'm not sure what you can do to prepare for something like this. There's not much you can do other than hope.
The way it kind of, I mean, I don't understand how this happened in New York City. The photographs and the videos of the amount of flooding and the amount of rainfall. I mean, we all remember the June 25th, 26th storm that we had here, which dumped, now I'm an East Sider, it dumped something like 7 inches of rain in 24 hours on our neighborhood. I believe that the New York storm was a similar amount of rainfall. And we just have to come to terms with the fact that these things are going to happen and we are not prepared for it. Our infrastructure was not prepared for this. I mean, this used to be, the storms that we've had this summer are the kind that you used to get once every 5 years, maybe. Now we got at least 5 or 6, maybe even more this summer alone. And, and we all know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't want to be too cynical about this, but I have a feeling like if next summer is dry, it'll be just another excuse to kick the can down the road.
Phew,
And
that's over. Yeah,
that's over. Well, it was a bad year, but those things happen in weather. And then in 3 more years, the next rainfall might be 12 inches in a day. I mean, what happened in Texas when they had Houston? I think they had a bad storm come ashore a few years ago. They got like 3 feet of rain. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's when we discovered that apparently they're so down on regulation down in the Lone Star State that they actually allowed developers to build housing additions inside a reservoir.
Yes,
I remember that. God,
put your house in the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah.
As your representative from the South, I will tell you that there are a lot of people in the South who view zoning regulations as intrusive government overreach.
Oh, I know, and I believe
it's a thing.
I mean, they did flood entire villages down there for electricity. So I mean,
it's I once had a farmer in Mississippi say to me, "The FDA bears watching." It was anyway. Anyway, I'm going to be Cassandra again here and put your two things together. There's an author named Carrie Vaughn who wrote a science fiction novel called Bannerless, and it's set in a dystopian society after a social collapse caused after a pandemic decimated the population and a series of climate change caused natural disasters destroyed our infrastructure and simply lacked the human resources to rebuild because of the pandemic. This book came out in like 2017 and I thought, oh, that's creepy. And then 2020 rolls around and it's like, oh, this is
prescient.
that lady's Cassandra.
Yeah.
So it's a really freaky book. It's a really good book. It's a murder mystery novel set in the society. I recommend it to all. But it's a really, I thought, as a pig compared to the zombie apocalypse or the alien apocalypse or the whatever, this is a really realistic, apocalyptic situation. And I'm a little worried we're actually living in it.
Mm-hmm.
So
go ahead, Susan.
Just the flooding. I mean, the wildfires out west are horrific. Colorado, this has been the worst season that they've experienced. My brother lives in Northern California. Every year is worse than the next. We're just seeing everything compound. And, these were choices that have been made over decades in letting fossil fuel companies run the show, giving them endless tax breaks and opportunities to expand and killing off green energy initiatives until, recently when, we have to do what we can, but in some ways it is way too late. And just the utter lack of investment in any kind of infrastructure, the unsexy stuff like our sewer systems or pump systems, but basic things like we all know what the roads are like in Michigan and bridges. And it's just all part of this conservative ethos that government can't do anything, don't invest in government, let private business run everything. And we have literally run the world into the ground. A lot of us have children and we're not leaving them very much to look forward to in the decades to come.
Yeah. Speaking of being Cassandra, I think she's absolutely right.
I'll tell you. I'm from Alabama, where there's a similar issue. Timber barons who control politics in that state have managed to convince the average person that if they pay a sustainable level of property tax, they won't be able to afford their $150,000 Dutch colonial. But, yet who is the person who actually benefits from super low property taxes? Oh, it's timber barons, right? So but they've got this system that's been chronically underfunded because of deception and, outright political manipulation for more than a century. And anyway, so yeah, and I'm not saying these things are exclusive to places we're talking about. We've tricked people into thinking that the government is never here to help and that taxes are always need to shrink and that government is always wasteful. And it's a lie. It's a big lie. People have been sold a bill of goods here, and you want nice stuff, you got to pay for it. And one thing is extremely clear: we do not want to pay for it.
Right.
That's, yeah. We've convinced people that this is a bad idea, and here we are now trying to convince them the exact opposite with these bills in Congress for infrastructure spending, and of course for the budget bill, the 3 whatever trillion that Joe Manchin is now balking at once again. We need to spend money to fix this stuff. Period.
Mhm.
And everybody's like, yes, fix it. But then they're like, okay, we have to pay for it. Well, we can't do that. And we certainly can't tax any corporations or rich people. You've seen this coalition of businesses coming together who are right now already arming to basically run commercials to get public opinion changed on the $3.5 trillion spending bill because they just don't want to pay more taxes. And that's all it is. It's not about whether or not it's good for society, good for their customers. It's about their bottom line right now. Nobody's thinking more than like a year ahead. And that's been our problem for a long time in this country.
Having been washed out of an industry that never thought more than 3 months ahead, I can tell you that.
I feel attacked right now, Nancy. No, we
make our quarterly numbers.
Well, so I have a friend of mine.
We were interviewing a candidate a few election cycles ago for federal office. I'm not going to say the candidate was. He did not win the free press endorsement. And this candidate said to us, as though this person were making a really sharp point, well, what has the government ever done for you? It was like, well, I drove here on a road, I'm breathing the air, I've got some water, and my child's at a school. So, like, there's a few things just right off the bat.
Yeah, my child's reading right. And
well, of course, yeah. So though, it's just like this connection of like, oh, there's all these cool things we like. Oh, but they're from the government. Like, I don't know.
There's a great book. I've recommended it in this space before, but I'm going to say it again. Michael Lewis's The Fifth Risk, which is about the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Energy in the first year of the Trump administration. And one of the takeaways from it is Lewis saying that the federal bureaucrats that he met in the course of researching that book and writing that book were some of the most impressive, competent people that he had ever met. These are people who are not paid a great deal of money relative to their skill set to keep an eye on things like nuclear power and nuclear power plants. And he said they are damn impressive people. And
sure.
I would
I'm going to get some I Heart Taxes bumper stickers made. Can I count all of you in? We'll donate. we'll donate the proceeds to, I don't know, the Detroit Water and Sewage Department.
My car's a piece of junk, so yeah, I'll put it on there because I know it's going to get egged and scratched and all that stuff. It's already messed up, so it's not a big deal. All right, we got to move on. COVID. We need to talk COVID here because school has started. Now, I no longer have a school-age child. Nancy, I know you do. And Wayne County, of course, has said countywide mandate. Oakland County, countywide mandate. That includes private schools in both of those counties and of course, public schools, which is interesting to see. Macomb County has yet to do it because Mark Hackle knows who his constituents are, and he's not going to have the guts to do something like that. Nancy, I want to ask you this. I mean, again, how are you feeling about sending your child to school?
Great. My school had a mask mandate before Wayne County installed it. I am a little disappointed in our district-wide vaccination rate. They won't tell me the vaccination rate for our building, but the last we heard it was 56%. In districts that do disclose this information, it's normally higher among teaching staff. I would like there to be more people vaccinated in my child's school. My son is almost 11. He spent 535 days without classroom instruction. It was terrible. It was a horrible experience for him. He's at the age where he's supposed to be becoming more independent, finding his way in the world, and he was thrust back into, our home. And he lacked a lot of the opportunities for connection that adults take for granted. He doesn't have one of these in his pocket where he can, connect to friends immediately. He's had a lot of screen time over the last year. I mean, all these ideas that like children are learning other skills while they're during the pandemic. No, my kid learned how many hours a day you can play Fortnite. I mean, it's just, this is, as a parent, you make risk calculations all the time. You take your child out in the car, which is really the most dangerous thing you can do with a child is drive them somewhere. And we don't even really think about this. Like, is this safe? We do the things we know that will keep us safer in a car and mitigate our risk, and then we go do that. So my child has masks at school. I believe there is a low chance that he will contract COVID. I believe that if he does contract COVID, there is a low chance that it would be a serious case, because thankfully children, even with the Delta variant, seem to fare better than adults. I'm not saying that there's no risk and that it's not a tragedy when a child dies. I think that when you look at the numbers, it's a very small percentage of total cases. But I know that the risks to him of another even few months of virtual schooling, I know that those are, when I weigh those risks, to me, sending him to school, which he started Monday, is to me the superior choice in every way.
How old is he?
He's almost 11. He keeps saying, can't you just tell them I'm 12 so I can get the vaccine? I tried to sign him up for a clinical trial. We didn't get picked. He's very eager to get vaccinated. I'm really hopeful that there are a lot of frustrations with the child vaccine thing. I wish that they would have said, we're going to work toward having this approved by August 1st so kids can get it before school, instead of like, I don't know, sometime this winter, which seems to be the thing. But I don't know, I manage risks and weigh risks all the time as a parent. This is one, and I'm not saying I don't have a lot of anxiety over this, because I do. Like, I probably sound really chill about this. I'm not. But it's part of my job as his mom is to weigh risks and take his input. I mean, it's not like I also hand decisions down from on high. I just talk to him about this stuff. He was very eager to get back to school.
Well,
but
Susan,
anyway.
Susan, you're a mom as well. And how old are yours now?
I have a 17 and 18-year-old, almost 18 and 19.
Okay. So where are they right now?
So my son is a senior in high school. My daughter is a second-year college student.
Okay.
I am utterly terrified that they are back in school, even though they are fully vaccinated. They have some health risk factors. In a college setting, I don't think that I'm telling you anything that you don't know. Not always the most responsible set of people. I trust my daughter, but, she is around a lot of people who, are doing fireball shots every day instead of going to class. So who knows what they're doing? So that's a frightening concept. There's a mask mandate, for both the schools they attend, but with these ever mutating variants, I have a lot of fears. Online school was not what I would consider ideal, but I very much liked knowing that my kids were safe. And frankly, with where we're headed, I will not be surprised if by Thanksgiving they're back online anyway.
It's entirely possible. Like I said, I take my son to school next week for his senior year. He's, small school, small class sizes, plenty of opportunity for social distancing, all that sort of stuff. He doesn't have any lectures with like 300 kids stuffed in one of those rooms. So I feel a little bit better about his situation, but he's also vaccinated, as are his roommates. And just about everybody at that school has been. These are kids that, aren't resistant. There's not going to be any protests at K College. I guarantee you that. Those kids are going to show up because they want to learn stuff. Go ahead, Nancy. You look like you were about to say something.
I was just going to say I greeted the morn today with a story, reading a story in the Detroit News that pissed me off, which was the absolutely recalcitrant, dug in, never going to change their minds vaccine refusers. And I think that there was a very nice picture of this woman holding up her phone, showing a photograph of her father who died of COVID, while she says, we rely on oils and herbs and just taking good care of ourselves and putting good food in our body. And I've reached the point now, and it might be because I have a trip coming up that involves vaccination passes and so forth, that I just think it's time for these people to shut themselves indoors for, however long it takes for this illness to run its course and go through, variants from alpha to delta to lambda to whatever zeta, and then beyond.
Well, and I think Mu is the latest one.
Oh, okay.
It is.
Okay.
Fauci was talking about it this morning, as a matter of fact.
Variant. Well, whatever it is, I'm beside myself. I mean, I think about this all the time, and I just become furious about it. And all this stuff about college is bringing back what college is like. We all remember what happened at Michigan State during the Harper's incident was it last summer? Yeah, where these kids could not be restrained from going out, and they're kids. I mean, that's what they do.
If I remember correctly, it was Portia Roberson on this program who said, when people are saying, I don't know what's in the vaccine, I'm not going to take it. She's like, I used to drink punch out of a garbage can when I was in college. Don't tell me, that you can't get the vaccine.
Mascara. I put some on my eyelashes this morning. I don't know what's in most of the things that I take.
People are willing to take
Go ahead, Alan.
People are willing to take animal medications,
right?
And yet the shot is so scary to them. And I always argue with people, and I know people who have not taken the shot, and I say, what's the problem? And they say, well, we just don't know. I said, it's just scary what we don't know. And I said, I think it's kind of scary what we do know. I think, and they say, well, you could, who knows, you could get really sick from the vaccine, or you could even die. And I said, well, I heard COVID, you can get really sick, and I heard you can die from that.
In much larger percentages.
Science has a real, I wrote a column about this, science has a real PR problem. And, a pandemic doesn't end when it's eradicated. Eradication, which I think a lot of us thought was, or was sort of kind of in the zeitgeist as a reasonable goal, we've only ever eradicated one illness. But a pandemic ends when it becomes just another risk you manage. Mm-hmm. People die from the flu every year. And this is not like people last year saying, oh, it's just like the flu. It's clearly not just like the flu. But once you are vaccinated, it effectively does seem, from what we know now, to become a lot more like the flu. And that for the vast majority of people who get it, who are vaccinated, it's going to be an unpleasant few days, rather an unpleasant week, rather than a trip to the hospital. If you're unvaccinated, obviously it's still an extremely dangerous illness. It's still like, even with Delta, like 90-something% of deaths are in the unvaccinated. So it's, it's the idea that, like, I don't know, it's a new risk. It's harder to consider. I started letting my child go to the park by himself this summer. And this is, parenting is filled with all of these things where you do stuff that terrifies you, like saying, it's all right if you go to the park by yourself. And it's like, I know that it's safe. We live in a busy neighborhood filled with people. The park has people in it all the time. It's 2 blocks from my house. It's fine for him to go to the park by himself. But at the same time, like, it's very rare for something to happen to a child at their neighborhood park. But at the same time, like, it's very rare. It doesn't matter if it's my child. But yet, you can't, I don't know. Parenting is filled with these moments of having to accept that. And that's just, it's hard. It's hard.
It is. We're definitely in new territory for most of us that weren't around in 1917. So, this is it. All right. So I do want to talk about one other thing related to COVID here. And this is kind of a funny story. And by the way, if you'd like to read it, just go to MichiganAdvance.com. Allison Donahue wrote a nice story taking a look at this Republican bill that banned Governor Whitmer from using the emergency warning system to tell people about mask mandates. Now, I don't understand what the point of that is, but they screwed up the bill. And I'll let Susan talk a little bit about this. They screwed up the bill in the first place and banned her from using the wrong system. But I mean, I'm thinking to myself, how petty is it? How much of a paranoid freak do you have to be to sit there and say, oh, the governor shouldn't be allowed to use the emergency system for a public health emergency? I don't get it. But the fact that they screwed it up in the first place, Susan, is what makes it so funny.
Yeah, I mean, the way it was described by Republicans, they're like, it should only be used in cases where, like, there could be a quick loss of life. I mean, I think we've all known that there are some people who die of COVID very quickly. This was like a mass event. We've had over 20,000 people die. That's like the population of what, Fernell? That's a whole lot of people. I think, letting people know about risks This would be on my list for things I would like to know, just like, you get Amber Alerts and things like that. But we do have multiple emergency alert systems in the state, and this particular bill was written for the wrong one, and the Republican sponsor said, "Oh, my bad, I may have to rewrite this."
Well,
guys, I think you need to take a pause here, because according to the Michigan Advance story, she used it 4 times last year.
4 times.
For 20.
And yes, to alert people about changing regulations that we had in the state. I kind of want to know. Look, are you lifting the mask mandate? Are you putting one in? It's nice to know that. And I don't mind getting a little buzz on my cell phone. I've never understood the people that bitch about getting an Amber Alert on their phone. It's like, how much of a callous prick do you need to be to sit there and go, well, that Amber Alert woke me up last night? Screw you.
Put your phone on Do Not Disturb.
I think there's something else maybe you're not considering. I don't know if you knew this, but she is a woman.
Oh, well, that's true.
Right. Yeah. And it's really important.
It's kind of like your phone is nagging you.
So when a woman gets elected governor, it's really important to try to contain that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, all that emotion, all that craziness, can be dangerous, I suppose. All right, well, we've got about 5 minutes left in the program here, and I think it is time indeed for us to consider this.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
Now, I gave mine to Kevin McCarthy a little bit earlier. He deserved it, I thought, by basically trying to extort the telecom industry in public the other day. Hopefully that has some consequences that come behind it. We shall see. But you can't do that kind of stuff. So he is my Schmuck of the Week. I may have another one at the very end. But who wants to go first this week with their Schmuck nominees? I'm going to put it on Nancy Caffer because she hates this part of the program.
I do. You know who's a Schmuck? This pothos. It's supposed to be growing all over the place, and it's just weird. I've had it for a year. Is that not good enough? Okay, I'll do my anti-Schmuck.
Okay.
My anti-Schmuck is all the women and girls in Texas, because God love them. They're, people can't just up and move. People can't just relocate. They got families, they got jobs, they've got commitments, they've got, resource issues. And yeah, I mean, I feel for them. I wish that
you can't say all. I'm sure there are plenty who are anti-abortion.
I would say all, because I think that the ones who are opposed, who are in support of this stuff, I pray they don't find themselves in this situation that they're trying to legislate out of existence, because they're going to change their minds real fast. And I do have empathy for them when their empathy is able to expand to understand what they've supported.
When it hits them over the head.
And we're talking about really big deal stuff here, and I don't take any pleasure in going, ha, now you're hoist on your own petard and you have to bear a non-viable pregnancy to term. That's a thing no one should have to do.
So I will counter this. She's feeling bad for all this. I'm going to nominate another schmuck. That's any idiot down in Texas that decides he wants to be some sort of abortion bounty hunter. Find a better way to make a living, man. I mean, are you kidding me? If I see, hear stories about people stalking women and all this kind of stuff, that's just, scumbaggery at a level that I cannot tolerate. All right. So that's my second schmuck. Nancy Derringer.
I was going to go with Joe Manchin, but I think a late closer was Matt DePerno, who is continuing to run around the state, pushing his election was stolen bullshit. And a part of me kind of doesn't want to name him that, because I really do believe that Napoleon was right when he said, when your opponent is destroying himself, why interfere? And that is exactly what he is doing. But I do believe in a loyal opposition, and he's dividing the Republican Party. There was just a story that broke before we went on from, again, in the Detroit News. Sorry, Nancy, but that was my household's main income source for a while. About how he called out some legislators at a party event in Manistee last weekend, which led to one of them getting up and dropping an F-bomb in front of a open mic to an audience.
Awesome.
So I'll say Matt DeFerno.
Well, he's sort of like Larry Elder out in California
Yes.
in terms of saying really, really bad things and stupid things. Gavin Newsom might actually win that recall election just because Larry Elder is saying so many stupid things out there.
Part of me hopes that he gets the nomination for Attorney General. And,
well, I want to watch the debate between he and Dana. That's for sure. That should be interesting.
Nancy, I don't know if you're considering something. He's a man. And when a man drops the F-bomb, he's just saying what he thinks.
That's locker room talk. Locker room talk.
True. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right, Susan Demas.
I am going to go with NBC war correspondent Richard Engel, who had a little hissy fit and said that our withdrawal of Afghanistan was the collapse of Western values, and had a big sad about it. What to me was a collapse of Western values is what happened on January 6th at our Capitol. And that's something I think that I would like to see more objective reporters call out rather than just cheerlead for endless war that, let's face it, is not popular amongst Republicans, independents, or Democrats. Yeah. Nobody really liked this war. It did not end well. It did not go well. Ask the Soviet Union how well their little foray into Afghanistan went before. Not a great place to go if you want a big military victory. So I really think that this endless drumbeat for us to go to war from the DC set needs to end, because it's just not what anybody really wants in America besides them.
Yeah,
absolutely. Alan Lengel.
I got a couple. As I mentioned, Lindsey Graham for pushing for Biden's impeachment, which is just a total. He's a total joke.
This is like kicking a chihuahua that's peeing on the carpet out of like submission. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes,
Carry on, Alan.
True dad. All right. The other one is Amy Coney Barrett, who I feel like, first of all, it was Trump's final steal there, and she is part of this whole cabal now, and she pretended during the hearings that she was going to go by the law, whatever the law was. And it's clear this was not based, the ruling by the Supreme Court was not based on law. It was based on ideology and perhaps loyalty to Trump. But, it just bothered me during the hearing, and it bothers me today to see somebody like that who pretended that everything was going to be on a legal basis and not anything to do with religion or their personal ideology. And so it's just total bullshit.
Yeah, I think the Senate needs to fully change the way that they vet these candidates. And I'm sorry, saying that these litmus test questions are off limits, that's not going to work anymore. No. Sorry. How do you feel about this? You better tell us. And if you don't, you're not getting the vote, period. Right. I agree with that one wholeheartedly. All right, we've got to wrap it up. I just want to let folks know I'm not going to be here next week. So we're not going to do the show next week, but 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be gone as well. But Nancy Derringer is going to host this for me.
I'm co-hosting with Lengel.
You're co-hosting with Alan. Okay, that's fine. I've got to be gone for a couple of weeks. And so it will be probably better without me, which is fine. But I got to get my kid back to school, and then I got to go up north for some stuff. But I'll be back. So thank you. And make sure you tune in when Nancy and Alan do this in a couple of weeks. It'll still be on my page, and it'll still be on the Deadline Detroit YouTube page as well. So you can still find it at the usual spots, but I know they'll do a fantastic job. In the meantime, thanks to Alan and Nancy for being here as usual. I always appreciate that. Thanks to Nancy Kaffer of the Detroit Free Press. You can always find her stuff in the opinion section of the Free Press. She does great work there. Susan Demas, of course, is the editor and a writer for MichiganAdvance.com. In fact, she has a great piece up just today. It's their page right now. And it's titled, "Why Didn't COVID Make Us Question What the Pro-Life Movement is About?" A legitimate question. It's a good piece. You should read it. I like it very much. And don't forget to read DeadlineDetroit.com each and every day as well to get all of your news needs fulfilled. Read the Free Press, of course. I read them all. But It's fine. But become a member at DeadlineDetroit.com. DeadlineDetroit.com/membership, an easy way to show your support for our little fly-by-night operation, as Nancy Derringer called it a little bit earlier on. We appreciate that. We do appreciate that.
Fly-by-night.
Oh, no, we kick butt. We kick butt. There's some great pieces on there right now. We've been breaking stories. We've been doing all sorts of good stuff lately. So it is worth your time. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast today. We certainly appreciate his help. And thanks to Lynette's Shrimp House in Highland Park for sponsoring this show. It's really, really cool of them that they do that. And again, check it out. It is in Highland Park. And I guarantee you, if you watch this a little bit later on DeadlineDetroit.com, there'll be an ad right after this telling you exactly where to go. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. And Mr. Lengel.
Hey, drive home safely.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davison, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.